The photograph hit the floor at the same moment the glass did. Zara had not meant to drop either. She had been standing in the kitchen of the Shin family compound, the big house in Songbuk-dong with its pale stone walls and the pine trees that pressed against the east windows, and she had been holding a cup of barley tea in one hand and the manila envelope in the other. And then she had looked at what was inside the envelope, and gravity had made its opinion known. The photograph showed her husband Shin Jaeho, standing in the courtyard of a building she did not recognize, in a city that looked like Busan, wearing a dark suit and a calm expression, shaking hands with a man whose face had been in every Korean newspaper for the last 2 years, because that man, Park So, head of the Daeryong organization, the most wanted figure in organized crime in the peninsula's recent history, had a warrant out for his arrest in 3 countries. That was not the part that broke the glass. The part that broke the glass was the date stamp in the bottom right corner of the photograph. April 14th. 3 years ago. 3 years ago. Shin Jaeho had been dead, or so she had been told. So the family had told her, with their careful grief and their expensive funeral and a grave in Yeongmusan Cemetery that she had visited every month for 3 years, laying white chrysanthemums on a stone that, she now understood, covered nothing. Her hands were shaking. She became aware of this the way you become aware of things when your brain is trying to protect you from what it knows, slowly at a distance, like news arriving from a country you thought had nothing to do with you. Zara says I. She turned. The housekeeper, Mrs. Joe, was standing in the kitchen doorway with a polite, horrified expression of someone who has witnessed a thing they understand they were not meant to witness. She was looking at the broken glass on the tile floor and the photograph lying face up among the shards. Zara bent and picked up the photograph. She straightened. She looked at Mrs. Joe with a calmness she did not feel. The specific calmness that Nigerian women learn early. The surface stillness that is not peace but strategy. That her mother had called keeping your face while your chest is on fire. I dropped my tea, Zara said. I'm sorry about the glass. Mrs. Joe looked at her, then at the photograph in her hand. Then away. I'll get the broom, Mrs. Joe said. Zara walked out of the kitchen, through the corridor that smelled of cedarwood and expensive nothing, and into the room that had been given to her as a home office when she had married Shin Jaeho's younger brother, Shin Jae-hwan, 14 months ago. She closed the door, sat down behind the desk, put the photograph on the desk, and looked at it. She thought about Jae-hwan, her husband, the man who proposed to her on a rooftop in Incheon with rain coming down, and said, very quietly, I know you are still grieving my brother. So am I. But I believe we could build something real, if you are willing. And she had said yes because she was 27 years old and she had loved Jaeho, and he was gone and Jae-hwan had kind eyes, and the family had been good to her, and sometimes yes is not joy. It is just the only door left. She thought about Jaeho, the man in the photograph, the man whose grave she had watered with 3 years of grief and by monthly chrysanthemums. The man who was, apparently, alive and working with one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in Korea. She turned the photograph over. On the back, in a handwriting she did not recognize, someone had written 7 words in Korean. He is coming back. Protect yourself first. She sat with those 7 words for a long time. Then she did what she always did when she needed to think. She called her best friend. Subscribe right now. This story does not slow down. Drop a comment. Did you see that coming? Adana Ose answered on the 3rd ring, which meant she was in the middle of something, but not something she'd choose over Zara. That had always been true of Adana, 29 years old, Lagos-born, currently working as a criminal defense attorney at a small firm in Mapogu, and constitutionally incapable of letting a call from Zara go past 4 rings. Talk to me, Adana said. I need to see you. Zara kept her voice level. Not the house. The cafe in Hongdae. The one with the orange door. Can you be there in an hour? A pause. Adana was smart enough to know what a request for neutral territory meant. I'll be there in 40 minutes, she said. Are you safe right now? Right now, Zara said. Yes. She put the photograph in the inner pocket of her jacket, changed out of her house clothes, and into the gray wool coat that made her look like someone with places to be and reasons for them. She told the front desk she was going out for a walk. The compound had security staff, 3 of them rotating, all of them employed by the Shin family and loyal to in the way that people become loyal to the people who pay them. She did not take the family car. She walked to the main road and hailed a cab. In the cab, riding south toward Hongdae, she looked out at Seoul moving past in its layers. The old neighborhoods pressed against the new ones, the mountains sitting at the edge of everything, the Han River flashing silver in the distance. And she thought about the first time she had met Shin Jaeho. A conference, 2 years before his supposed death. She had been 22, fresh from her master's program, working as a junior interpreter for a trade delegation. He had been 28 and already carrying the specific gravity of someone who has grown up understanding that they are the heir to something large and complicated. He had been looking at her from across a reception room with the patient attention of someone waiting for an opening in the conversation to say something real. And when the opening came, a bad joke from a delegate that required rescuing, he had said to her in clear, accent-perfect English, "I think you're doing 3 jobs at once. The one you're paid for, the one he doesn't know he needs, and the one you're doing for everyone else in the room just by staying composed." She had looked at him, said, "For actually, I'm also mentally redesigning the flower arrangement." He had laughed. It was a laugh that had nothing diplomatic in it, real and quick and surprised, and she had thought, this one is different. They had dated for 8 months. She had met the family. Jaeho's mother, the matriarch, Shin Jaeho, a woman carved from patience and ambition in equal measure, had received Zara with the specific warmth of someone who has decided to be gracious without yet deciding whether to be genuine. Jaeho's brother Jaehwan had been quieter, watchful in a way she had attributed to shyness. The family's business was legitimate on its face, shipping, logistics, a real estate arm. But she had been a trained interpreter with a background in communications, and she had, by then, learned enough about what rooms feel like when something is being managed, and Shin family rooms had that feeling. She had not asked about it. She had loved Jaeho, and she had let herself be in that love, and then he had been killed. A car accident. The family said, on a mountain road outside Busan. The body recovered and returned in a closed casket, and she had grieved and she had let Jaewon hold her through it, and 14 months ago she had said yes to a second yes that felt at the time like the only honest thing she could do. And now the photograph. The cab stopped at a light. Rain was beginning. The specific Seoul November rain that felt like the city thinking something through. She looked at her reflection in the window. "You knew," she said to herself. Not the whole thing, but some version of it, some shape of it. She had known that the Shin family carried things they did not name, and she had loved Jaeho enough to decide not to see it. And then she had grieved him enough to decide the past was the past. And then she had married his brother because the past was the past. The cab moved. She arrived at the orange-doored cafe 4 minutes before Adana. Adana walked in with rain on her coat and read the situation in approximately 3 seconds. She had the specific gift of people who have spent years in courtrooms, which is the ability to look at a face and know what kind of truth it is carrying. She sat down across from Zara, ordered 2 Americanos from the server, without consulting the menu, and said, "Show me." Zara put the photograph on the table. Adana looked at it, said nothing for a long time. Then she turned it over and read the handwriting on the back. Then she looked at Zara. "Who sent this?" Adana said, "No idea. It was in an envelope on the kitchen counter when I came down this morning. No stamp, no return address. The housekeeper said she found it on the front step. Does a housekeeper know what's in it? She saw it when I dropped it. She's not going to say anything. She's been with the family for 20 years, and she has the specific loyalty of someone who has decided that what she doesn't officially know can't be held against her." Zara paused. But she looked at me a certain way when I picked it up, like she recognized something. Adana picked up a photograph, held it to the light. "That's real," she said. "Not composite, not altered. Look at the shadows, consistent light source, consistent angle. And the man with him." She stopped. "Park So," Zara said. "I know who it is." Adana set the photograph down carefully, like it was evidence, which it was. "Zara, do you understand what this means?" "Tell me what it means," Zara said, "because I've been turning it over for 2 hours and every version of it is worse than the last." Adana folded her hands on the table. She had her lawyer face on now, not cold, but structured, the way a person looks when they're building something out of pieces that need a hold under pressure. "If Jaeho is alive," she said, "then the death was staged. The family staged it, or they knew about it, or, worst case, they did it on purpose to get him away from something or someone. She paused. He's working with Daryong. That's not a business associate. That's a commitment. Park Suho doesn't shake hands with people who aren't already inside the organization. She looked at the photograph. This photograph is from 3 years ago. 3 years ago, someone connected to the Shin family wanted Jaeho removed from visibility. The question is why? And the question of why, Zara said quietly, leads to Jaehwan. Adana looked at her. Your husband, she said. My husband, Zara confirmed, who inherited everything when his brother died. The business, the family authority, the seat at the table. Jaehwan, who was always the quieter one, the one nobody looked at directly, because Jaeho was in the room. She stopped. He asked me to marry him 4 months after the funeral. I thought it was grief making him reach for something solid. Now I'm wondering what else it was. Adana was quiet. You can't go back to that house tonight, she said. I have to go back to that house, Zara said. If I disappear, whoever sent this doesn't know what I know. And if whoever sent this is Jaeho. She stopped. Then he sent it for a reason. He said, protect yourself first. That implies he knows there's something I need protection from. She picked up the photograph. He's been alive for 3 years. He has not come to me, but he sent this. She put it back in her pocket. I want to know why now. I want to know what changed. Adana looked at her with the expression of someone weighing professional advice against personal love and finding the weight complicated. You're going to do exactly what you're going to do, Adana said. I know this about you, so tell me how I can help. I need you to find out everything you can about the Shin family's business in the last 4 years, Zara said. Anything that touches Daryong. Anything that connects to Busan. Use your legal contacts. I know you have people who know people. I have people who know people, Adana said. I also have a very strong feeling that this is about to get significantly more complicated before it gets simpler. Yes, Zara said. And you're going back to that house anyway. Yes, Zara said. Adana picked up her Americano. My professional advice, she said, is that you are about to do something very dangerous. Your personal advice? Zara said. Adana looked at her, then at the pocket where the photograph had disappeared, then at her friend's face, which had the expression Adana had learned over 12 years of friendship to recognize as Zara Osei at her most decided, not reckless, not fearless, but the specific steady intentionality of a woman who has already calculated the cost and chosen to pay it. My personal advice, Adana said, is that you keep your phone charged and you call me every 12 hours. Done, Zara said. They sat in the orange-doored cafe with Seoul raining outside and drank their coffee and did not talk about the thing neither of them could fully see yet. The shape of what was coming, which was large and still forming, like whether moving in from somewhere beyond the visible horizon. If you've ever had to smile at someone while your whole world was unraveling, this chapter is for you. Drop a comment. She went back to the house. Jaehwan was home when she arrived. He was in the study. The big dark wood room where the family business was nominally conducted through a series of meetings that Zara had never been invited to attend and had never asked about, and he came into the hallway when he heard the front door. You were out, he said, not accusatory, observational. Jaehwan's voice did most of its heavy lifting through tone, which was something she had always found difficult to fully read. I went for a walk, she said. It started raining. I found cafe. He looked at her coat, at her face. He had his brother's height, but his own face. Something more angular, more guarded. The face of a second son who learned early that the world's attention was organized around someone else. You look cold, he said. Come in. Mrs. Joe made soup. The kindness in his voice made everything harder. She had, in the 14 months of their marriage, concluded that Jaehwan was a genuinely complicated man. Not cruel, not simple, not easily summarized. He had never raised his voice at her. He had been patient in the specific way of someone who is managing something large by keeping a tight perimeter around what he allows himself to feel. He had been, in his way, careful with her. She had been careful with him. Now she sat across from him at the kitchen table and watched him ladle soup and try to look at him with new eyes, eyes that had seen the photograph, that knew what it meant for him to be sitting here, the head of this family, the legitimate face of a business that was not entirely legitimate, and she found that the new eyes and the old eyes were fighting each other. "You're quiet tonight," Jae said. "I've been thinking," she said. "About what?" She had prepared an answer to this question on the walk from the gate to the front door. Something about work. She had a translation contract she'd been neglecting. A good reason to be distracted. She had it ready. What she said instead was, "About Jaeho, I've been thinking about him lately." The air in the room changed. It was very subtle. A fractional slowing of Jaewon's hands as he set down the ladle. A change in the quality of his stillness. If she had not been watching for it, she would have missed it entirely. "What about him?" Jaewon said. "I don't know," she said. I visited the grave last week, and I found myself wondering what he would think of things. How the family has changed since he's been gone." She looked at her soup. "Do you think about him?" "Every day," Jaewon said. It came out simply and without hesitation, and she could not, for the life of her, determine whether it was the truth of a man who had grieved his brother or the truth of a man who was managing what it cost to have betrayed one. "Me too," she said. They ate the soup. The pine trees pressed against the east window. Sol went about his night business outside the compound walls, under the table. Her hand rested on the pocket where the photograph lived, her fingers against the fabric above it, as though she could feel its weight through the wool. 3 nights later, the second contact came. She had been sleeping lightly. She had been sleeping lightly since the photograph, which was to say she had been conducting a series of 2-hour approximations of sleep separated by stretches of careful wakefulness in which he lay still and listened to the house. Jae-hwan slept deeply and regularly, which he had always taken as a sign of a clear conscience, and was now rereading with fresh uncertainty. At 2:47 a.m., her phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. It said, "The East Garden Gate. Now, come alone. I know you found a photograph." She lay still for 30 seconds. Then she dressed in the dark, jeans, a thick sweater, flat shoes, and moved the house with the practiced quiet of someone who's been learning for 3 weeks how their own home sounds at night. The security staff rotated on a 2-hour cycle. She had mapped it. The East Garden Gate was at the back of the compound, behind the pine trees, opening onto a narrow service lane. She unlocked it with a key she had made 3 weeks ago from the copy in the kitchen drawer. She had not known why she was making it at the time, only that it seemed important to have an exit she controlled. The lane was dark and cold and smelled of pine resin and distant rain. A figure stepped out of the shadow of the wall. She had thought she was prepared. She had been telling herself for 3 weeks that she was prepared. She had looked at his photograph so many times that she had thought she had processed the possibility of his face. She had not. Shin Jaeho was 31 years old, and he was standing in the lane behind his family's house at 2:47 in the morning, and he was alive, and looking at him. The same jaw, the same particular way of holding himself that she had once known better than she knew her own breathing, broke something in her chest that she did not have a medical term for. "Zara," he said. "Don't," she said. Her voice came out flat. Not cold. Flat, the way a voice goes when it cannot trust itself to carry emotion and still function. He stopped. "You're alive," she said. "Yes." "You've been alive for 3 years." "Yes." "I visited your grave," she said, "every month. I put flowers on a stone that covers nothing, and I talked to you. I told you things." She stopped. "I grieved you. I married your brother." "I know," he said. His voice had something in it that she would not let herself interpret yet. "You have 45 seconds, she said, "to tell me something that is worth me not walking back through that gate." He looked at her. In the dark, she could see that he was thinner than she remembered, and that something in his face had been rearranged by the years, not broken, but reformed, like a structure that has been under significant pressure and held. "My family tried to kill me," he said. Silence. "My mother," he said. "My brother. The business was in crisis 4 years ago. A debt to Darion that my father had accumulated before he died, that I was inheriting along with everything else. I had decided to go to the authorities. I had evidence. I was going to hand it over and take the consequences." He paused. "Someone told Darion. Someone inside the family. And 2 days before I was supposed to meet with prosecutors, my car went off a mountain road outside Busan. He looked at her. It was not an accident. She said nothing. I survived, he said. Barely. A man pulled me out of the wreck. A Daryong contact, of all things, who had his own reasons for wanting me alive. I was in a private clinic in Japan for 4 months. By the time I was recovered, the funeral had been held, Jae-won had taken over the family, and he stopped. And you were there, in the house, being taken care of. And I understood that I was being kept quiet by the fact of your safety. Her legs were working. She was still standing. She identified this as a significant personal achievement. They used me, she said, as leverage. As long as you were in that house, inside those walls, I would not move against them. Because if I move against them, he stopped. They would hurt me, she said. Yes. So for 3 years, she said, you've been alive, and you've been with Daryong, and you have allowed me to grieve you and marry your brother and live in your family's house, because you were afraid of what they would do to me. Yes, he said. What changed, she said. Why now? Because Jae-hwan is about to do something irreversible, he said. He is 3 weeks from finalizing a deal that will make the Shin family a permanent asset of the Daryong organization. Not a debtor, not a partner, an asset. Wholly owned. The family business, the holdings, the reputation. All of it laundering operations for Park Soo-ho. He looked at her. Once that deal closes, there is no walking it back. Everyone in that house becomes untouchable by any normal protection, including you. He paused. I have 3 weeks to stop it, and I cannot do it from outside those walls. She looked at him for a long time. You want to use me, she said. I want to protect you, he said. I want to give you the chance to get out before the walls close. Those are not the same thing as using you. They feel very similar from where I'm standing, she said. I know. He looked at her with a direct, careful attention she had once found so extraordinary in a room full of people performing things. I'm not asking you to trust me. I lost the right to ask for that. I'm asking you to consider whether what I've just told you matches what you've been feeling in that house. Whether it explains any of the things you've been carrying without a name for them. She thought about Jae-won's careful management of her. The meetings she was never invited to. The way certain conversations stopped when she entered a room. The specific flavor of the family's attention. Warm on the surface, angled slightly away from her at its core. Tell me what you need me to do, she said. He's alive. She knows. And now they have 3 weeks. Comment below, do you trust him? The next morning, she called to Dana. I need you to pull the Shin family's corporate filings from the last 4 years, she said. Specifically anything that touches Busan Logistics, any show registrations in Japan, and the names of any joint venture partners that appear in the last 18 months. You met him, Adana said. A pause. I met him, Zara said. Adana was quiet for 3 seconds, which was, for Adana, a very long silence. Are you okay? She said. No, Zara said. Give me the filings. I'll explain tonight. She spent the day doing what she always did. The translation work, the household management, the particular performance of a well-organized wife in a well-organized home. She had her morning tea with Jae-hwan before he went to his meeting. She asked about his schedule. He told her part of it. The part that was safe to tell, she understood now, which was the part that looked like ordinary business. There's a dinner Friday, he said. Important clients. I'd like you to come. You always handle these evenings so well. She looked at him, thought about what Jaeho had told her. 3 weeks, an irreversible deal, a dinner that was important for unnamed reasons. Of course, she said. He smiled. He had a nice smile. She had married him partly because of the nice smile, which was not the same as Jaeho's smile, but was its own honest thing. And she had needed an honest thing at the time. She looked at that smile now and felt something complicated that she did not have a clean name for. Not hatred, not even betrayal, because she did not yet know for certain what Jae-hwan knew and what he had chosen to do with what he knew. She only knew what Jaeho had told her, and Jaeho was a man whose death had been staged by his own family. And she did not know yet how much of that was Jae-hwan's making and how much was their mother's. She needed to know. That afternoon, she went to see the matriarch. Shin Jaeho lived in the smaller house at the far end of the compound. She had chosen to withdraw there after Jaeho's death, which had been read by everyone as grief, but which Zara was now rereading as a specific withdrawal of a woman who has done something she cannot look at directly. She was 71 years old, and she still had the bearing of someone who has managed a large enterprise through decades of pressure, straight-backed, precise, with a particular economy of motion that belongs to people who have learned not to waste energy on anything decorative. She received Zara with tea and the specific warmth of a woman who has decided to love her daughter-in-law as a project rather than a person. Zara had always known this about Jaeho. She had accepted it as the terms of the arrangement. "You look tired," Jaeho said. "You haven't been sleeping well." "I have a lot on my mind," Zara said. "About Jaeho? Is everything all right between you?" "Everything is fine," Zara said. "I've been thinking about Jaeho. Actually, I went to the grave last week." She watched Jaeho's face. "I was thinking about the accident. The road outside Busan. I realized I never asked. Did they ever determine what caused it? Why the car went off the road?" Jaeho's face was composed. It was so composed that the composition itself was information. The investigators concluded it was speed combined with a wet road surface. Jaeho said, "Jaeho drove too fast. He always did. I told him many times." She picked up her teacup. "Why are you asking this now?" "I don't know," Zara said. "I suppose I'm still processing things. Sometimes grief works on a long delay." Jaeho looked at her with an expression that was doing several things at once, and doing all of them very well. "You were good for him," Jaeho said. "I didn't always make it easy for you to know that, but it was true." She set down her cup. "Don't carry the grief of what you didn't say to him. He knew what he meant to you. I am certain of that." The specific cruelty of this sentence, delivered with such genuine-sounding tenderness by a woman who knew her son was alive, moved through Zara like a cold thing, quick and total. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was steady. She stayed for another 20 minutes. She said the right things. She drank the tea, walking back across the compound through the pine trees in the gray November light. She understood two things with the clarity of someone whose uncertainty has just been resolved. Shin Jaeho knew Jaeho was alive, and Shin Jaeho had just lied to her face with the practiced ease of someone who had been doing it for years. It was the mother, she told Adana that evening, in the car outside a supermarket in Mapogu, which was the most reliable place she had found to have a conversation she was certain wasn't being overheard. The father died 7 years ago. When the debt to Daryong came due, Jaeho had two choices: hand over the business or give them Jaeho. Jaeho was going to go to the police. He'd told her. She couldn't allow it. It would destroy everything the family had spent 40 years building. So she made a third choice. She staged his death and handed him to Daryong, Adana said. Flat, the courtroom voice. Not handed exactly. He survived the accident. But the staging, yes, that was Jaeho. And Jae-hwan, she paused. Or Jaeho and Jae-hwan knew it was going to happen and let it happen, which is the same thing. Adana was quiet. And the marriage, she said, keeps me in the compound, keeps me controllable. As long as I'm Jae-hwan's wife, I'm part of the family structure. Protected, yes, but also contained. Zara looked at the supermarket lights. I was their insurance policy. If Jaeho ever tried surface, he had a reason to stay silent. And the dinner Friday, Adana said. I pulled the filings, Zara said. One of the Busan Logistics subsidiaries has a joint venture partner that appears in the last 18 months. A holding company with a Macau registration. Daryong has 3 known Macau registrations. The dinner Friday is almost certainly the precursor to the formal signing. What does Jaeho want you to do at the dinner? He wants the documents. The signing documents. Whatever Jae-hwan is preparing. If we have the documents before they're executed, and we can get them to the prosecutors Jaeho was originally going to approach 4 years ago, the deal falls apart and Daryong has exposure they can't manage publicly. The prosecutors, Adana said. You mean he still has that contact? Apparently the prosecutor's office has had an open file on Daryong for 4 years. They've been waiting for inside documentation. Jaeho was supposed to be that. He never made it, but the file is still open. Adana was very quiet for a moment. "This is extremely dangerous," she said. "I know. If Jaewon or you not discover what you're doing. I know." "Zara." Adana's voice had changed. It had the quality of her oldest voice, the one from childhood, from the Lagos neighborhood where they'd grown up on parallel streets, from the specific intimacy of knowing someone before either of you understood who you were going to become. "If something happens to you—" "Nothing is going to happen to me," Zara said. "You don't know that." "No," Zara said. "I don't. But I know that if I do nothing and that deal closes, whatever protection I've had inside those walls disappears." Jaeho was right about that. Once they're fully owned by Daryong, I'm not a protected daughter-in-law. I'm a liability. She looked at the wet street. "Doing nothing is also dangerous. It's just a danger I can predict, and this family is good at making predictable dangers look like safety." Adana breathed out. "What do you need me to do?" she said. "I need you to be the one who holds the documents when I get them. Directly to the prosecutor's office. Your hands, not mine. If anything goes wrong at the dinner Friday, you need to be able to move without waiting for me." A long pause. "Okay," Adana said. "Okay, but I'm going to be outside that house Friday night. In my car, 2 blocks away with my phone on." "I expected nothing less," Zara said. "She has 3 days. The dinner is Friday, and she has to smile through every minute of it. Subscribe. We're going into the deep water now." Thursday came with its ordinary demands: a translation deadline, a household errand, a lunch with Jaewon at a restaurant near his office where he talked about the business with the precise vagueness of someone accustomed to saying a great deal without disclosing anything. She watched him over her bowl of gomtang and thought about what it must cost, the performance of an ordinary man. Jaewon had been doing it for 4 years, presenting a legitimate face to a world that included his dead brother's girlfriend, whom he had married, whom he had installed in his family's house, like a piece of furniture that also happened to be a safeguard. She had thought this was kindness. She had wanted it to be kindness. "You seem far away," Jaewon said. "I'm sorry." She brought herself back, smiled. "Tell me about the dinner tomorrow. Who will be there?" A fractional hesitation. "Business associates," he said. "From Busan. You won't know them. Just the usual, polite conversation. I handle the business side of things." He looked at her. "You just need to be yourself. Just be yourself." She thought about all the selves she was managing simultaneously in this moment and almost laughed. "Of course," she said. That night, she met Jaeho for the second time. The East Garden Gate at midnight. Rain again. Seoul's November was committed to this particular mood. "The dinner is tomorrow," she said. "Walk me through what you know." He told her. The signing documents were being prepared by a law firm in Busan, a notarized joint venture agreement that would formalize the Macau connection and effectively transfer controlling interest in 3 of the Shin family's key companies to entities controlled by Daryong. The documents would be brought to the dinner by a courier and reviewed and initialed before the formal signing schedule for the following week. "I need photographs of the documents," she said. "Not the originals. Photographs. My phone, while Jaewon's attention is elsewhere. The courier will have the documents in a briefcase. The briefcase will be with the Daryong representative, a man named Kwon Do-hyun. He'll be at the dinner as a guest. He'll keep the briefcase close all night, but there will be a moment. There always is, when logistics requires attention and it's unattended." "How do you know this?" she said. "Because I've attended 3 of these dinners in 4 years, he said. "I'm part of this organization. I have been, by necessity, part of this organization." He looked at her. His face in the dark had the expression she had not let herself look at directly until now. Something raw and specific. The expression of a man who has been paying a price for years and is finally being allowed to say so. "I am not innocent in this, Zara. I want you to know that. I have done things as part of Daryong that I cannot undo. I can only try to make the next thing count for something." She stood in the rain and looked at him. "I loved you," she said. "I loved you and I grieved you, and I built myself a whole new life on the fact of your absence. And you were alive the entire time, working inside an organization that was controlling my life through the threat of what it might do to me." She stopped. You say you're not innocent. You're right. You're not. He said, nothing. But neither is standing here doing nothing while your family finishes what it started, she said. So tell me the rest. He told her the rest. When she walked back through the gate and through the pine trees and through the quiet house to the room where her husband was sleeping, she lay down in the dark and looked at the ceiling and thought about all the ways a life can be a thing you were put inside without being asked, and about all the ways you can, if you choose to, and if you're lucky enough, put yourself back outside it. She thought about her mother in Lagos, who had said to her once when she was 14 and upset about something she no longer remembered, "The only thing you control is what you do with what is true, not what is true, only what you do with it." She thought about what was true. She thought about what she was going to do with it. Then she slept. 3 hours, solid and dreamless. The dinner was held at a private room in a restaurant in Yongsan. That was the kind of place that required knowing someone to get a reservation, and required knowing someone else to find it at all. Black lacquered walls, soft lighting, food that arrived in small, perfect quantities that suggested restraint rather than frugality. Zara wore a dark green dress that she had owned since before the marriage, and her grandmother's gold earrings, and a specific composed expression she had developed at 22 as a junior interpreter and had been refining ever since. There were 8 people at the table. Jaehwan at the head, Yinak, who had come despite not usually attending these functions, which was its own signal. A family lawyer named Beck. 2 men from Busan whom she did not recognize, and who had the specific energy of people conducting an evaluation that they were presenting as a social visit. And Kwon Do-hyen, who was 45 and compact, and who set a black briefcase under his chair with the practiced casualness of someone who has made the gesture many times. She shook hands with everyone. She was gracious and composed and multilingual in a way that made her genuinely useful at these dinners, which she understood now was why she had always been invited. Not affection. Utility. She sat at Jaehwan's right. He touched her hand briefly. She smiled. The dinner proceeded in its careful way, course by course, conversation threading through business and weather and the economy, the Busan men, and Yinak doing a kind of verbal dance that she parsed for subtext while appearing to tend only to the surface. Kwon Do-hyen was quiet, watchful, his eyes moving around the table with the professional attention of someone cataloging variables. At the end of the second course, he looked at her directly. "You're Nigerian," he said. "Not unfriendly. Factual. My family is," she said. "I grew up between Lagos and Seoul." "Unusual path," he said. "My father was a diplomat," she said, which was the abbreviated version of the truth. "You travel for a living, and eventually a second place becomes yours." He nodded, looked at her a beat longer than the exchange required, then returned his attention to his plate. She breathed carefully. The moment came the beginning of the 4th course. Exactly as Jaeho had predicted, one of the Busan men had a phone call that required brief attention. Something about a logistics update, he said, excusing himself. Yinak chose that moment to address the family lawyer, pulling his focus. Jaehwan turned to the other Busan man, Kwon Do-hyen, whose chair was slightly to the left of the table's flow, found himself briefly isolated from the main conversation. A server arrived at that exact moment. Zara had watched the server rotation all evening, with a question about the dessert selection that required Kwon Do-hyen's attention because the dessert allergies had been attributed to him at the reservation stage. While he leaned slightly to his right to hear the server's question, the briefcase was underneath his chair and his attention was elsewhere for approximately 11 seconds. Zara's phone was already in her lap. She had spent Thursday evening learning how to photograph a document at close range in low light, with the phone silenced and screen dimmed. Adana had run practice sessions with folders in her car outside the Maple-gu supermarket. Her hands knew the motions. She reached down as though adjusting the strap of her heeled shoe. Her phone angled into the gap between the briefcase and Kwon Do-hyen's chair leg. The briefcase was not locked. Jaeho had told her it wouldn't be, because locked briefcases attract attention, and Darion's people preferred the confidence of the unlocked. She eased the flap, angled the phone. For photographs in 7 seconds. She straightened, replaced her phone in her lap, adjusted her posture. Across the table, Yinak was looking at her. Their eyes met. Yinak's face held its composed warmth, but beneath it, And Zara had been reading Enoch for 3 years, had been learning the grammar of this face for 3 years. There was something else, a calculation, the specific intensity of someone who is watching a variable they thought they had controlled. Zara smiled, warmly, with everything she had. Enoch held her eyes for one more second. Then she turned back to the lawyer. Zara sat through the dessert course with her photographs of confidential joint venture documents on her phone and her pulse at a rate she was not going to examine until she was out of this room. She got the documents. But Enoch saw something. Subscribe. This is the moment everything either works or falls apart. In the car on the way home, Jae talked about the dinner. She said the right things. He seemed satisfied. He reached across and took her hand in the back seat, and she let him hold it and looked out the window at Seoul going past. You were wonderful tonight, he said. I was just myself, she said. That's what I mean, he said. She looked at him, at the familiar profile, the careful face, the man she had married in the specific condition of someone who needed something solid after everything that was solid had gone. She felt something she did not want to feel. Not love, not anymore, but the ghost of it, the residue of 14 months of proximity and small shared kindnesses and the specific vulnerability of two people who had given each other something that looked enough like safety that neither of them had examined it too closely. Jae, she said. He looked at her. She nearly said it. All of it. The photograph, the East Garden gate, the lane at midnight, the documents on her phone. She nearly handed him everything and said, "Tell me your side of it. Tell me what you know. Tell me if you can be the person I need you to be right now." She did not. "I love you," she said instead. Not a lie. The residue, the ghost of the thing that had been what it was. His hand tightened on hers. "I love you," he said. And she sat in the dark car and did what her mother had taught her and what her own particular training had refined and what she had been doing in one form or another since she was 22 years old in a conference room. She kept her face while her chest was on fire. She texted the photographs to Adana from the bathroom at 11:42 p.m. Adana, confirmed receipt at 11:44, and sent back a single message. "I see it. Clear enough. Give me until morning." At 3 a.m. her phone lit up. Unknown number. East Garden Gate. She went. "I got them," she said. Jaeho looked at the images she showed him. His face in the lamplight from the lane did the thing it had always done when he was processing something significant. A stillness that was not blankness. A containment that was its own kind of expression. "These are enough," he said. "My friend has them. She'll go to the prosecutor's office when they open tomorrow." She hesitated. "There's something else." "Tell me." "Your mother was watching me at the dinner. Not just watching. She was evaluating something. I think she knows or suspects that something has changed." His face tightened. "How long before your friend gets to the prosecutor's office?" he said. 9, 10 in the morning. "Then you have until 10 o'clock to be somewhere other than that house," he said. "Get out in the morning. A reason that sounds ordinary. An errand, a meeting, anything that doesn't seem like departure. Take only what you can carry without it looking like packing. Go to your friend. Don't come back." She looked at him. "And you," she said. "I'll deal with what I need to deal with," he said. "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I have that's true right now," he said. She stood in the lane in the cold and looked at the man she had loved when she was 22 and grieved when she was 25 and was standing in front of now with everything rearranged between them and nothing simple about any of it. "I am very angry with you," she said. "I want you to know that. I understand what you were managing and why, and I believe you about what you were trying to protect. And I am still very, very angry with you for 3 years of chrysanthemums and a grave and a husband who turned out to be a complication I was not equipped for." "I know," he said. His voice was very quiet. "I want you to survive this," she said. "Whatever that means. Whatever form that takes. I want you to survive." He looked at her. "Go back inside," he said gently. "Get some sleep. Be normal in the morning. And then go." She went back through the gate, through the pine trees, through the quiet house where her husband slept and her mother-in-law waited in the smaller house on the far side of the compound with all her managed secrets and her well-practiced warmth. She lay down. She did not sleep. She watched the clock. She has until 10. She has everything. And the most dangerous part hasn't happened yet. Drop a comment. Are you breathing right now? Morning came with particular quality of mornings when you've been awake all night. Too bright, too loud, the ordinary sound of a house waking up carrying extra weight. She heard Mrs. Joe in the kitchen. She heard Jaewon shower. She heard the pine trees moving in the wind outside the east window. She dressed carefully, not in travel clothes. In her usual Saturday morning things, jeans and a soft sweater. Everything exactly as it always was. She made sure her grandmother's earrings were in her ears because they were the one thing she would not leave behind, and they were also the one thing that looked like jewelry rather than packing. She went downstairs, said good morning to Jaewon, who was eating toast and reading something on his phone, said good morning to Mrs. Joe, drank half a cup of tea. I'm going out this morning, she said to Jaewon. I want to pick up something for my mother. She called yesterday. She's trying to find a specific brand of Korean grain tea that she can't get in Lagos. I told her I'd send a package. She smiled. Is there anything you need while I'm out? Jae-hwan looked up from his phone. Nothing I can think of, he said. Will you be back for lunch? Probably, she said. I might stop and see Adana if she's free. I haven't seen her in a few weeks. His face was open, unguarded, ordinary. She looked at it. Of course, he said. Say hello for me. She put on her coat, picked up her bag, which had in it her passport, her bank card, her phone charger, 2 changes of clothes folded small, her laptop, and a photograph of her parents taken in Lagos in 1991 that she had carried for 11 years and was not going to leave behind. She said goodbye to Mrs. Joe. She walked through the compound past the pine trees, past the East Garden gate, which was closed. She did not look at it. She walked through the main gate and out onto the street of Songbuk-dong, which was doing its Saturday morning thing. Delivery people, a woman walking a small dog, the specific slightly softer tempo of a residential neighborhood before noon. She did not look back. She walked 3 blocks before she let herself breathe at full capacity. Then she called Adana. I'm out, she said. I'm at the office. Adana said, the prosecutor's office opens at 9. I'm going in at 9:15. Come here first. She took a cab, through Songbuk-dong, down toward Maple-gu, through Seoul that was going about its ordinary Saturday without any awareness that a small, specific act extraction was in progress inside its grid. She looked out the window and felt something she had not felt in weeks, a physical unclenching, as though her body had been braced for impact for long enough that it had started to feel like a permanent condition, and was only now beginning to remember what it was like to simply sit in a seat. Her phone rang. Jae-hwan. She let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, she answered. Hi, she said. Where are you? His voice was different. The ordinary Saturday voice was gone. In its place was something she had not heard from him before, stripped of the management, of the careful, warm packaging. I'm in a cab, she said. I told you, the tea for my mother. Zara. A pause. My mother called me this morning. She said she saw something at the dinner last night. She wanted me to... He stopped. There it was. She wanted you to what? Zara said. She kept her voice level. Come home, he said. Jae-hwan. She closed her eyes for 1 second. I think you know I can't do that. Silence. Long enough that she could hear his breathing. I didn't know about the accident, he said. I need you to know that. What happened to Jaeho? My mother made a decision I was not part of. When I found out, he stopped. When I found out, it was already done. He was already gone. The family was already changed. I didn't know what to do with what I knew. So you did nothing, she said. I did nothing, he said. I am not going to tell you that makes me innocent. I know what it makes me. A pause. I did marry you. That was real. Whatever else it was, that was real. She sat in the cab with Seoul moving past a window and thought about 14 months and a rooftop in Incheon in the rain, and a nice smile, and a man who had been careful with her in the specific way of someone who needed carefulness to mean more than it did. I know it was real, she said. That's the part that doesn't make it easier. He was quiet. Are you safe? He said. Yes. Are you, is Jaeho? Yes, she said. He's alive. A long silence. I am glad, Jaewon said. I have spent 4 years being glad about that in private, in a way I couldn't say to anyone. His voice broke, slightly at the edge. Tell him that. If you see him, tell him I'm glad. Tell him yourself, she said, after this is over. If you make the right choices in the next 48 hours, there might be something worth having on the other side of it. She paused. Don't let your mother tell you what those choices are. She hung up. The cab pulled up outside Adana's office building. She paid and got out and stood on the pavement for a moment in the Seoul's Saturday air, which smelled of coffee and street food, and particular clean cold of November. Then she went inside. She's out. Jae-won said it was real. And now she and Adana walk into the prosecutor's office. This is the moment. Are you ready? The Serious Crime Division of the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office was housed in a building that looked exactly like what it was. The institutional architecture of a place where justice is bureaucratic before it is dramatic. Gray walls, fluorescent lighting, the specific smell of processed air and old documents. Adana had spent 20 minutes on the phone that morning with a contact from her prosecutor years, a woman named Deputy Chief Yun who had run the Daryong file for 3 years and who had picked up the phone on the first ring when Adana called and said, in the flat voice of someone who's been waiting for a very specific call for a very long time, I'm in. When can you come? She thought about the photograph hitting the floor. She thought about the lane at midnight in the rain. She thought about a funeral she had attended for a man who was standing in a service lane, and about 3 years of chrysanthemums, and about a rooftop proposal in Incheon that had been real in the ways it had been real, and not real in the ways it hadn't been, and about 14 months of careful proximity to a man who had not been honest with her, and had also, genuinely, cared for her, and about the specific complexity of human beings who are both things at once. She thought about what her mother had said when she'd arrived. You don't have to be anything for a few days. She was not going to be anything for a few more days. She was not going to decide about Jaeho or about Seoul or about where she lived or what came next. She was going to eat a gussie and sleep 9 hours and sit on the balcony and let Lagos do what it always did, which was to exist so enormously and so insistently that it reminded you that you were also allowed to exist enormously and insistently at full capacity, without apology. She put the phone in her pocket, went inside to where her mother was cooking. Can I help? She said. You can cut the tomatoes, her mother said, and tell me what happened. The whole thing. Don't leave out the difficult parts. Zara picked up a knife. I don't know where to start, she said. Start with what hit the floor, her mother said, with the specific accuracy of a woman who has raised a daughter well enough to know that the beginning of any real story is the moment when something is dropped. Zara looked at her mother. Then she started cutting the tomatoes, and she told her everything. 3 months later, on a Tuesday afternoon in February, Zara walked into the Seoul Central District Court building for the first day of what the press was already calling the Daryong Reckoning trial, the prosecution of Park Seo and 14 associated defendants, including 2 members of the Shin family. She sat in the gallery. Adana was beside her, in the good navy coat she wore when she needed to feel like herself. They sat close, their shoulders touching, the way they had sat through things together since they were 12 years old on parallel streets in Lagos. Jaeho was one of the prosecution witnesses. She had known this. She had been prepared for it. She watched him take the stand with a specific feeling of someone watching a person they know move through a room in a way they've never seen before, formal and contained, and carrying something she recognized as a quality she had always admired in him and had been grieving along with everything else. He testified for 4 hours. He was precise. He was specific. He did not minimize his own role in the events of the previous 4 years. He named what he had done, the things he had participated in, as a Daryong asset, with the flat, specific honesty of someone who has decided that the only remaining version of integrity is the whole truth. When it was over, when the court recessed, she was waiting in the corridor. He saw her from 20 feet away. Stopped. They stood in the courthouse corridor with its bad lighting and its institutional smell and its specific acoustics, every sound flattened and distant, and looked at each other. Neither of them moved for a moment. Then he crossed the distance. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see that the thing in his face was the same thing that had been there in the lane at midnight in the rain, raw and specific. The expression of a man who has been paying a price for years and is not sure he has paid enough and is trying to work out how you go on from that. You came, he said. I came, she said. I don't know what to ask for, he said. I know what I want. I don't know if I've earned the right to want it. She looked at him for a long time. You haven't, she said. Not yet. She paused. But I didn't come because you earned it. I came because I needed to see you walk out of that room standing up and facing it. And you did. That's not the same as forgiveness, he said. No, she said. It's not. Forgiveness is a longer road. I'm not there yet, and I'm not going to pretend I am. She looked at him steadily. But I am here. And I said, I didn't want you to disappear again. Both of those things are true at the same time. He looked at her with the full weight of his attention, which had always been one of the things about him. The complete, unhurried quality of being looked at by someone who was entirely present. Can I call you? He said. When this is over, when I know where things stand for me, legally, practically, all of it, can I call you? She thought about it, not as a performance of thinking, actually thought about it with all the layers it deserved. Yes, she said. You can call. He nodded. There was something in his face that she identified, after a moment, as relief. Not the relief of someone who's gotten away with something, but the relief of someone who has done the full measure of the hard thing and been allowed to keep going. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me, she said. Just keep facing it. She turned. Adana fell into step beside her. They walked out through the courthouse doors and into the February Seoul afternoon, which was cold and blue-skied and bright in the specific way of winter days that are trying to remind you something is coming after them. How are you? Adana said. Zara looked at the city. I don't know yet, she said, but I think I will be. That's enough, Adana said. Yes, Zara said. For right now, that's exactly enough. They walked. Seoul made its noise. The Han River was somewhere south of them, silver and present, the city's patient witness. The mountains sat at the edge of everything, as they always had, holding the shape of place. Ahead of them, the afternoon went on, uncomplicated, ordinary, the particular gift of a day in which nothing is falling and the floor is exactly where you left it. She breathed it in and kept walking. They sat across from Deputy Chief Yun at 9:22 a.m. Yun was in her mid-40s, with the face of someone who has absorbed a great deal of frustration without losing the ability to be surprised by evidence. She looked at the photographs on Adana's phone. She looked at Zara. How did you obtain these? She said. At a private dinner, Zara said. I am the daughter-in-law of the Shin family. The documents were present. I photographed them. Are you aware that evidence obtained in this manner? I know the admissibility question, Adana said. We're not bringing these as prosecution evidence. We're bringing them as a basis for a warrant application. You get the warrant. You get the originals through proper channels before the formal signing happens next week. Yun looked at the images again. Something moved in her face. The Macau registration. She said, this is the connection we've been trying to establish for 2 years. There's also a person, Zara said. A witness. Someone who has been inside the Daryong organization for 4 years and who has documentation of their own. Transactions, communications, operational details. He was prepared to testify 4 years ago. He was prevented from doing so. She paused. He's still prepared to testify. Yin looked at her with the focused intensity of someone receiving news they were hoping for but had stopped expecting. Who? She said. Shin Jaeho, Zara said. The office was very quiet. Shin Jaeho is dead, Yin said. No, Zara said. He's not. The next 48 hours were the kind that do not feel like real time. They feel like a substance that has been compressed. Each hour thicker and more consequential than ordinary hours. Each decision leaving a mark. The warrant application was filed Saturday afternoon. Yun moved with the speed of someone who had been waiting for this moment and had kept the machinery ready. By Sunday morning, 3 warrants had been issued. For the Shin family's primary business entities, for the Busan law firm handling the joint venture documents, and for Kwon Do-hyun. Kwon Do-hyun was arrested Sunday at 7:40 a.m. at his hotel near Yongsan. The Busan law firm's offices were searched Sunday morning. The original documents were seized. At noon on Sunday, Shin Jaeho walked into the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's office and surrendered himself. He had negotiated, through a lawyer he had engaged in the days since the first contact with Zara, a cooperation agreement. His full testimony and documentation in exchange for consideration in sentencing. The agreement was not immunity. He had been clear about that, apparently. He was not asking for immunity. He was asking for the chance to say what he knew and let what was true take the weight it deserved. Zara was not there when he walked in. She was at Adana's apartment in Mapogu, sitting at the kitchen table, drinking tea that was made correctly, the Lagos way, condensed milk, strong, and watching the city through the window. Adana sat across from her. Neither of them spoke for a while. "Yanak," Zara said finally. "She'll be arrested," Adana said. "When Jaeho's testimony is formalized, the evidence trail will lead directly to her. What she did to her own son," she stopped. "She did it for the family," Zara said. "She has always been doing everything for the family. She just decided the family was the institution, not the people inside it. That's not love," Adana said. "That's ownership." "I know." A pause. "And Jaehwan," Adana said. Zara wrapped both hands around her mug. "He called me again this morning," she said. "He said he's cooperating with the investigation. He said he went to the prosecutor's office himself Saturday afternoon, independently, without being asked. He told them everything he knew about the Busan operations and his mother's arrangements with Daryong." She paused. "He said it was the first honest thing he had done in 4 years, and that he understood what it meant for him, and that he was sorry." "To you?" Adana said. "To everyone," Zara said, "but also specifically to me." Adana looked at her. "What did you say?" "I said I heard him." She looked at her tea. "I don't know what else to say yet. I might not know for a while." "That's allowed," Adana said. "I know," Zara said. "I'm giving myself permission." They sat in the kitchen. Seoul went about its Sunday. The light through the window was a specific pale winter light that makes the city look like a thing drawn in graphite, detailed, patient, made of layers. "She's out. The documents are with the prosecutors." Jaeho turned himself in. "Drop a comment right now. What do you think she should do next?" 2 weeks later, Zara flew to Lagos. Not to stay. She was not ready to answer the question of where she was going to stay, which was its own large, unresolved thing, but see her mother and her grandmother and her aunts and the specific landscape of the place that had been her first yes, the city that smelled like the ocean and markets and warm bread and other people's cooking. Her mother met her at the airport, held her for a long time without saying anything, which was the right thing and exactly what her mother always did. Mothers who have been mothers long enough know that sometimes there is nothing to say, and the holding is the whole vocabulary. "You look tired," her mother said finally. "I am tired," Zara said. "I am very, very tired." "Come home," her mother said. "I'll make it gussy, and you can sleep, and you don't have to be anything for a few days." "Okay," Zara said. She did not have to be anything for 4 days, which were among the most regenerative days of her adult life. She slept 9, 10 hours. She ate 3 meals a day that had been cooked with a specific intention of feeding someone back to health. She sat on the balcony in the early morning with Lagos spreading out below her, all its layers and sounds and insistent life, and she let herself just be present in it, without managing anything. On the 3rd day, her phone showed a message from a number she had saved as Eastgate. "I want to say something, but I don't know the right way to say it. I think I might need more time to know how." She read it, put the phone down, picked it up again. She typed, "I know, I might need more time too, but I don't want you to disappear again." His response came quickly, "I won't. That's a promise, I mean." She looked at her phone for a long time. 4 months after the trial began, on a Thursday in late spring when Seoul had finally remembered how to be warm, Zara sat in a small office above a street food market in Mapogu and told a woman named Kim Soyeon that yes, she would take the contract. The contract was for a translation and cultural liaison consultancy, exactly the kind of work she had been doing before the Shin family and all its rearrangements. Kim Soyeon was 40, operated a mid-sized firm with clients in Lagos, Abuja, and 3 West African capitals, and had found Zara through Adana's professional network with the energy of someone who knew what she was looking for and had been looking for a while. "You have an interesting background," Soyeon said, reviewing the CV. "I've been in some interesting situations. Zara agreed. The gap in your recent employment history. Family matters, Zara said. Resolved now. Soyeon looked at her over the edge of the CV with the expression of someone deciding how much to probe, and concluding that the woman across from her had the specific composure of someone who has been through something significant and come out the other side with her competence intact, which was what the job required. The Legos clients will love you, Soyeon said. The Abuja clients will be more challenging. They have opinions about everything, and they express them at full volume. I'm from Lagos, Zara said. I grew up around people with opinions. Soyeon laughed. When can you start? She started the following Monday. The work was good, not glamorous. Translation contracts and coordination calls, and the steady management of cultural misunderstandings between people who needed each other's business, but did not always understand each other's context. She was good at it in the specific way of someone who had been doing it since they were young enough not to know it was a skill, who had been translating between worlds, her parents' Legos and their adopted soul, her own complicated position inside the Shin family, the unspoken things in rooms where power was being managed, for so long that the work felt like breathing. She worked. She had dinner with Adana twice a week. She called her mother on Sundays. She went to Yalmason Cemetery once in late spring and stood in front of the grave that covered nothing and thought about what it meant to grieve something that turned out not to be gone, whether the grief was wasted, whether the 3 years of it had been real, even though the premise was false. She decided the grief had been real. The loss had been real, even if the death had not been. She had lost 3 years of a person she loved. She had lost a version of her life that would have existed if he had stayed. She had gained a marriage that was complicated and a family situation that had resolved itself in a courtroom, and a clarity about herself that she would not have developed any other way. These things were all true simultaneously. She left the cemetery and got coffee. Then she went to work. The first time Jaeho called, it was a Saturday in June. She was at the market in Mapogu, the outdoor one with the produce section that smelled of spring onions and something citrus, and she was deciding between 2 varieties of the same pepper when her phone rang, and she looked at the screen and stood very still for a moment in the middle of the market with people moving around her and the spring air doing its warm, uncomplicated thing. She answered. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she said. "Is this a bad time?" he said. "I'm at the market," she said. "Hold on." She moved to the side, out of the flow of people, to a space between a dried fish stall and a flower vendor. The flowers were yellow, bright, and spring-specific. "Okay, I'm here." "How are you?" he said. The question was careful, not small talk, not performing normalcy, actually asking. "I'm at the market on a Saturday," she said. "I have a new job I like. I had dinner with Adana last night, and she made me laugh until it hurt for the first time in months. I'm okay." She paused. "How are you?" he told her. The sentencing had come down the previous week. 4 years, with the cooperation agreement significantly reducing what could have been a decade. He was out on bail pending a formal process. He had been meeting with a lawyer about the conditions. His assets had been frozen, most of them. The legitimate ones were in review. He was staying in a small flat in Itaewon that belonged to the lawyer who had negotiated his cooperation agreement. "For years," she said. "Yes. Are you okay with that?" A pause. "I'm not going to tell you it's easy," he said, "but it's the right weight. I don't want less than I've been given." He paused again. "I want to use the time well. I've already started working with a legal aid program. They need people with specific knowledge of how certain operations work for advocacy purposes. It won't be glamorous, but it's something." She stood between the dried fish and the yellow flowers and felt something move in her chest. Not the ache of the old grief, not the raw anger of the lane at midnight, but something quieter and more complicated. The specific feeling of watching someone you knew become someone you are still getting to know. "That sounds like a good thing to do," she said. "I thought so." A pause. "Can I ask if we could meet?" "Not for anything. Not to ask for anything. Just to see you. In a normal place. In daylight. Not a lane at midnight in the rain." She almost said not yet. "There's a coffee place near the market," she said instead. 20 minutes from here. They have a good dark roast, and the tables are by the window, and it's ordinary, and nothing about it is a lane at midnight. A moment, "Tell me the address," he said. She told him. Then she bought her peppers and the yellow flowers because they were there, and she had been wanting to put something bright in her apartment since she moved in. She walked through the spring market, toward the coffee place. He was there before her. She saw him through the window, sitting at one of the tables by the glass, with his hands around a coffee cup, in a gray sweater and ordinary jeans, looking like a person in a cafe on a Saturday in June. Not a photograph, not a figure in a dark lane, just a person in the world, waiting. She stood on the pavement for a moment. She thought about the photograph hitting the floor. She thought about her mother, saying start with what hit the floor. She thought about the grave at Yangmason and the 3 years in the lane and the courthouse corridor and 4 years and a legal aid program and yellow flowers and the particular ordinariness of a coffee place near a market on a Saturday in June. She thought, I don't know yet. I really don't know yet. And that is its own kind of honest ground to stand on. She went inside. He looked up. She put the yellow flowers on the table because there was nowhere else to put them, and they looked slightly absurd and entirely right. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he said. He was looking at the flowers. "I was at the market," she said. "They were there." "They're good," he said. She sat down. The server came. She ordered a dark roast. The coffee place was warm and slightly noisy in a way of places where people are simply present in their ordinary lives, not performing anything, not managing anything. She looked at him across the table. He looked back at her. Outside, so as though about it Saturday, unhurried, immense, entirely indifferent to the specific coordinates of one woman and one man in a coffee shop by a window, figuring out what the truth allows him to do next. "Tell me something real," she said. He thought about it. "I used to think control was the same thing as safety," he said. "I spent 4 years trying to keep everything contained and in its place, and it didn't keep anyone safe, especially not you." He looked at his coffee cup. "I think the real version of safety is something else. I'm still working out what." "Me too," she said. "Are we?" He stopped. "I don't know yet," she said. "But I'm here, and I'm not pretending I'm somewhere else. That's what I have right now." "That's enough," he said. "It might be," she said. The coffees arrived. So went on outside. The yellow flower sat between them like something bright that did not need a name to be worth keeping. And that, the not yet, the honest ground, the two of them present and beginning, is where we leave them. What nobody tells you about surviving something like this is that the survival itself is its own kind of work. Zara had expected the aftermath to feel like relief. She had gotten out. She had done something dangerous and had worked, and the family was in the hands of the law, and the prosecutors had what they needed, and she was free, genuinely, legally, structurally free, for the first time in years. She had expected relief to be the dominant emotional texture of her days. Instead, it was a kind of suspended quiet, like the air after a storm. The storm had been real and large, and it was over, and now the world was clean and strange, and she had to relearn how to be in it without the particular awareness she had been carrying, the constant reading of rooms, the careful management of what she said and how she moved, the specific skill set of someone living inside something that required navigation. She noticed it most in small moments. The first time she came home to Adana's apartment, she had been staying there for the first month after the house, and she walked to the door and realized she had not mapped the exits. She had not noted who was in the building when she entered. She had not cataloged the windows and their angles. She had simply walked through a door into a place. She was safe and had not needed to verify the safety first. She stood in Adana's hallway and felt the weight of that ordinary act. The simple trust of walking through a door, and something released in her chest that she had not known was held. She called Adana from the hallway. "I walked in without checking the exits," she said. Adana was in the kitchen. There was the sound of something being stirred. "Good," Adana said. "It sounds small," Zara said. "Nothing about that is small," Adana said. "Come have dinner." She went to have dinner. The trial ran for 11 weeks. Zara attended, on and off, not every day, but enough. Enough to watch Park Suho sit in a defendant's chair and receive the evidence of his organization's operations with the flat composure of someone who has been in enough rooms to have stopped being surprised by consequences, even when they arrived. Enough to watch the Busan lawyer attempt to argue document inadmissibility and fail. Enough to watch Jae-won take the stand as a prosecution witness and answer questions in precise, factual way of someone who has made a decision about honesty and is not going to unmake it. She watched Jae-won on the stand and felt the complexity she had been giving herself permission to feel. He had been complicit. He had known and he had chosen, for 4 years, the path of not acting, which in that specific situation was itself a choice with weight to it. He had also, when the moment came, walked into a prosecutor's office without being asked and told everything he knew. She did not know what to do with someone who was both of those things. She suspected she was not supposed to know yet. After Jae-won's testimony, he had sent her a message, not asking for anything, not a meeting, not her forgiveness, not a conversation she wasn't ready for. Just, I hope you're well. That's all I wanted to say. She had written back, thank you for what you did on Saturday. He had sent back a single word. Always. She had looked at that word for a long time. Then she had put her phone in her bag and gone back to work. Yoonok's arrest had been a different kind of hard to watch. The matriarch of the Shin family had been apprehended at the compound in Songbuk-dong on a Sunday morning. The photograph of her being escorted to a vehicle had been in every newspaper by noon. 71 years old, straight-backed even in that moment, composed in the way of someone who has decided that dignity is the only thing left worth keeping. Zara had seen the photograph and felt something she could not simply categorize as satisfaction. Yoonok had done what she did, had arranged the near death of her own son, had managed Zara's life as a variable in a larger calculation, had served tea with the warmth of someone who had decided on a lie and was living inside it completely. These things were true, and they carried the weight they deserved. But Yoonok had also been 71 years old, and she had loved what she understood the family to be, had organized her entire life around the preservation of something she believed mattered, and had made the catastrophic error that people who love institutions more than people always eventually make. She had treated the people inside the institution as the least important part of it. Zara thought about this in the way she thought about complicated things, without rushing toward a clean conclusion, letting it be as complicated as it was. She sent a card to the address of Yoonok's lawyer. Not a forgiving card. Nothing she could honestly write would be that. Just a card that said, I am sorry for what was lost. I hope you find a way to peace. She did not know if Yoonok would receive it or what she would do with it if she did. She sent it anyway. Because some things you do not for the person you are doing them for, but for yourself. For the maintenance of your own capacity to move through the world without the weight of held resentments calcifying into something that changes the shape of you. Her mother had taught her that. When she was 14, after a fight with a girl at school that she had been certain she was right about and probably was. Her mother had said, the person who wronged you gets to walk away. What you hold on to, you carry. Decide what you want to carry. She had decided. Adana was the one who said it out loud. Finally, on a night in April when they were on Adana's balcony with wine and the city spread below them doing its late evening thing, all the lights and the rivers and the mountain outlines and the irreducible largeness of soul being soul. You're going to be okay, Adana said, not as a question, as a verdict. I know, Zara said. I mean actually okay. Not performing okay. Not surviving. Actually okay. Zara looked at the city. I know, she said again. Differently this time. Adana looked at her. The thing about you, Adana said, with the specific candor of someone who has been someone's best friend for long enough to have earned it, is that you have always been a person in any room who was actually paying the most attention. The one who saw the thing nobody else saw. Who read the geometry of the moment before anyone else understood there was a geometry to read. That's a kind way to put it, Zara said. I'm not being kind, Adana said. I'm being accurate. You read the room at a ballroom dinner when you were 22 and knew someone was lying before you had any rational reason to know it. You read the lane at midnight and made the decision to help when you could have walked back through the gate and stayed where it was safe. You read the dinner in Yongsan and moved when the moment was exactly right. She looked at her wine glass. You have been reading rooms your whole life. It's time you read one that's just yours. No exits to map. No threats to calculate. Just yours. Zara looked at her. I don't know if I know how to do that, she said. I know, Adana said. That's why I'm telling you. So you know that's the next thing. A pause. The city went on below them. The coffee shop, Zara said. The yellow flowers, Adana said. How did you? You texted me a photo, Adana said. You said they were there, and then you didn't text again for 3 hours, which means you stayed, which means it went well enough to want to stay. She looked at Zara with the expression of someone who has been her person's person long enough to have calibrated every frequency. That's a room that's yours. Whatever it turns into, however long it takes. It's yours. Zara looked at the city for a long time. I'm terrified, she said. I know. I don't know if I trust the feeling yet. You don't have to trust it yet, Adana said. You just have to keep showing up to the coffee place. That I can do, Zara said. Then that's enough, Adana said. For right now, that is exactly enough. They sat on the balcony with their wine. So made its noise. The Han River glittered south of them, patient and silver, and going about its ancient business of being a thing that stays constant while everything else changes. Above them, the sky was doing something lovely, the specific purple gray of a Seoul spring night that is clear enough to show you a few stars if you look at exactly the right angle, which Zara did, tilting her head back just slightly and finding them. She sat with her best friend in the city and the stars that were making their small, patient effort against the light pollution, and she felt not perfect, not finished, not resolved, but present, fully and entirely present, in a room that was hers, without exits to map. That was enough. That, for the first time in a very long time, was more than enough. 6 months after the photograph hit the floor, Zara published a short essay on a blog she had been keeping intermittently since her Yonsei years. The essay was titled Reading Rooms, and it was about the specific skill of being a person in any space who notices things. It was about growing up between Lagos and Seoul and learning early that you're always translating not just language but atmosphere, the gap between what is being said and what is true, the geometry of moments. She had not planned to publish it. She had written it late one night in Adana's spare room, when she could not sleep, because writing was how she processed things the way other people use running or cooking or very long walks. She had sent it to Adana as a document, meaning for it to be just between them. Adana had said, you should put this somewhere. It found readers. Not many at first. A few hundred, then a few thousand. Then a message from a woman in Nairobi who said she had been going through something not entirely dissimilar and had read the essay 3 times in one sitting, because it put a name to the specific exhaustion of being always the person who was paying the most attention. She wrote back to the woman from Nairobi. They had a long exchange. The woman was a journalist. Eventually she asked Zara if she would be willing to be interviewed for a piece. She was writing about Nigerian women building lives across the Korean diaspora. Zara said yes. The article came out in March. It was careful and honest, and Zara had approved every quote. It described in general terms the experience of building and losing and rebuilding a life in a city that was not the one you started in. It did not name the Shin family. It did not need to. Her mother called the day the article went live. I sent it to your aunties, she said. Mama, Zara said. They are proud. Her mother said. I am proud. Your father would have been proud. She sat with that for a moment. Thank you, Mama, she said. Come home at Christmas, her mother said. That's all I ask. I'll come home at Christmas, Zara said. She put the phone down and looked out the window of her own apartment. She had moved in February, a small place in Mapo-gu that smelled like fresh paint and possibility, and the specific, uncomplicated privacy of a space that was wholly hers, and thought about her father and what he would have said, and decided she knew. He would have said, you handled it. And then he would have changed the subject, because her father had not been interested in dwelling on things that were over. He was a man who faced what was in front of him, and moved on when the facing was done. She faced the window. The city was in front of her. The day was in front of her. She moved on. The photograph hit the floor. She picked it up and didn't put it back. That's the whole story. Subscribe to Afro-K Heartstrings. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what do you think she says the first time Jaeho call?